With so many different platforms,
Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter,
and their purposes evolving daily, navigating social media can be, well, complicated. Welcome to the Social Media Sucks podcast from Cubco.
Social media really sucks.
Where we unpack the latest trends and help remove the suck from social media.
Okay, welcome back, you guys, to the Social Media Sucks podcast. And today we're going to talk about something we are very passionate about at Cubco. It's
cocktails.
Cocktails also, and of course.
We're very passionate about cocktails.
And then the other thing would be then
Content.
repurposing content.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit more about that, and hopefully we're going to inspire some of the listeners with this knowledge you guys hold. So as usual, I have Andy and Chris with me.
Hey, what's up? Oh,
Take two.
is it like it's a race? Okay.
No, like
Andy,
It should be
go
you first. It should be
Yeah.
you first.
No, sorry,
Okay.
the seniors go first. So let's,
seniors go first. Okay.
you know,
What
But
time is
isn't
it? I've missed supper.
oldie but goldie, you know?
Wasn't supposed to be like me first because then Chris can like have a longer sequence.
Sure.
I'm gonna just say like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, do it.
Okay.
Say, hey, what's up? I'm Andy.
Hey, what's up? My name is Andy. Thanks for listening, guys.
Great.
Yes, and I'm Chris. What do you do here, Andy?
I do content strategy mostly for our clients, sometimes for myself and for the company.
Yes. What do you?
I'm a project manager here at Cubco.
Nice.
So I manage clients,
yes, and
client
processes.
projects,
Yeah.
and processes. Yes.
And I am the CEO, and I'm involved in client strategy, business strategy, marketing of Cubco, and also, the podcast.
Bringing
That's one of
cocktails to
those.
the table.
And I got Liz, our office manager, to make these. I had nothing to do with them other than I put the glasses out and said, we could use some cocktails. So those of you listening
Magic.
at home and are not viewing the podcast, I'm sorry you don't get to see these lovely cocktails, but they are lovely and very nice. So thanks to Liz. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers. Those of you listening at home, you can enjoy the sounds of us drinking. It's so bad. Okay. Enough of that. Let's talk about content.
Let's talk about content, guys. So really welcome, and let's just start with what is repurposed content?
Okay, so I should go? Okay. So content, I should have something smart to say. Repurposed content is content that you're repurposing. I mean, it basically comes down to whatever you've made. Can you make that into other things? Can you recycle it? Can you upcycle it? Can you remix it, remaster it to be used in
new context.
a new context or your current platforms or different platforms? That's basically it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
wanna add
I think repurposed content can be anything that's not just being reposted, but you actually put some extra work in to change the angle of the content piece.
To
or,
modify what it
Yeah,
already
you
have.
actually do, even if it's the slightest change, you do something to change the purpose of the content a little bit.
Yeah. Can you not just do something without changing the context? That can be repurposed content, right? Like you can just have the same context, it's just done in a different way.
Yeah. I
Or
would
like
say
not
so.
done in a different way, but like maybe, for example, if you had a blog post and you wanted to take a little snippet out of it for your Twitter or something like that, that's maybe just micro content out of the larger pieces of content.
Yeah,
That's also
exactly.
repurposing content.
I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So that is what is repurposed content.
Okay, then why should brands then repurpose content?
Because it's a great way of getting more out of the content that you already invested in. So I think repurposing content is especially useful for brands who are looking to maximize their social media ROI, even though it's really hard to measure that. Exactly like, all of the brands are struggling with keeping up with the pace and the frequency of content that
The demand for
the
content.
demand for content, and especially not only the demand, because I think the demand is kind of satisfied because of the saturation of the market, but the competition is so crazy now in social media.
But demand, is that only from customers, people, audience, or is it also the algorithm that dictates the frequency? I don't know.
That's an
It's a
interesting
combination,
question.
I think. That's a very good question.
Yeah,
but-
that's a good question. I would say though it's mainly the people, and I think their need for content is very well satisfied. So you need to do a really good job in terms of, standing out and repurposing content in a way that's going to be interesting and still valuable for them.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think why also is that it gives you a chance to understand what content your fans like, or fans or consumers like.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times when we're looking or working with brands from a strategy standpoint, oftentimes we're stepping in and they don't have enough actual data because they don't have enough content. So we can't actually look at it and go, what is working, what's not, what kind of content themes, what kind of content styles do your potential consumers or fans like? And we have to up the volume to actually even get some data that makes sense. So I think that's also a reason, is that you can start to put together something that looks like, oh, this is some insights. Because if you do one post a week, it's probably not going to give you enough data to make any solid arguments on.
But what if a brand or content creator comes and says, then maybe it's more quality versus quantity? I mean, what about, now we talk a lot about quantity, but what about, don't you want a more quality and then use a little bit of time and then less frequent to produce something really good,
right,
instead of just keep on posting?
True. But what is quality content?
You tell me.
You don't know until you don't
True.
learn enough about your audience, and you
Yeah.
don't identify what would be the best and most valuable for them.
Definitely.
Then you can start creating quality content, I think.
I think quality is often associated with
Big
a
scale
look,
production.
and that's fine. Like, look at how nice this podcast is and how it sounds. And we obviously agree with a lot of people when it comes to, you want to separate yourself from your competition, you want to show what you can do. That's all great. And I think that high production value can help you achieve some sort of branding and some sort of awareness. Absolutely. But I do believe that we could spend months making one podcast, the highest quality, with the best cameras in the world. We could hire Spielberg to make it. And well, we can't afford him. And if it got one view, then would you still call it quality content?
True.
Probably not, because you'd be going like, okay, that was a waste of money. And I think that's what it comes down to, is that. And I think also when we look at what works in social, sometimes the most ragged ass stuff that does not look good, sound is off, like, performs the best. And that's really interesting, because I think a lot of people are afraid of advertising. And when they're scrolling through the feed, they can kind of smell advertising.
Yeah.
It's like they see it and they're like, oh, I got to scroll faster through it.
Inauthentic.
Yeah, it's inauthentic, or it just reeks of sort of, oh my, this is high-end production. This is somebody trying to sell me something. Get out now. So I think if you lower the quality, if we want to say that, you can have a better opportunity of breaching that initial fear, or that
we
initial.
can see that from TikTok when we talked about it in our last episode, right? Like the quality, production rate, that production value doesn't have to be that high, but it's still a great content.
It just has to be relatable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It just has to touch you on a deep level. It doesn't matter what camera, what sound quality, who you hired to produce it. If it doesn't touch you on a deep emotional human level,
Then it's not quality.
it's not quality. It's something else. It's something. It's art. Art also touches you on a sort of level.
Yeah.
But
So you guys would kind of recommend for a new established company or brand to like post very frequent in the beginning, so they would have some content to analyze and build data on?
yeah, I mean, we were talking about Kylie Jenner makeup a few episodes back, where she built this empire. And if you go back to her early stuff, what was different about her style on all of the Instagram and all of the social media was that it was literally taken with her phone. They had products out on a table, in someone's bag. Like, it literally looked like it was Kylie Jenner herself taking those photos, and you felt like you were on a journey, or that you were with some friends just looking at makeup that was around her, taking your own selfies. And I think that's how you talk to that audience, that young audience that says, okay, this is what I'm doing, so I can relate to it, because I'm doing the same thing. I'm taking pictures of my
Unfiltered.
unfiltered, sort of
relatable.
like, and I think that was very different compared to the other makeup brands, the L'Oreal's, the Max Factors, the higher end makeup brands, like I can't name
Established
it.
ones, yeah.
Yeah, that was doing like super nice professional photo shoots.
Conservative.
A bit conservative, yeah, but also a little inauthentic.
I think it's really interesting what you were just touching up on, authenticity and how it relates to repurposed content, because some of the brands are not repurposing content because they are afraid of the thought even that, some of their followers or fans would see the same content and would maybe that lower their, brand value or something like that.
Right.
But I think brands shouldn't really be worried about that, because if you do content repurposing in the right way, users will barely or never experience this feeling of seeing the same thing again and again and again, over and over from time to time again.
Do you see everything a brand posts at all times?
No, you didn't. No, you don't.
If we look at the stats, we see, generally speaking, you reach 10% of your audience on a good day, maybe 20% if you're super lucky, on an organic stand. And I think that's very interesting. So that 90% of your audience literally has not seen that post. Mm-hmm. So if you think about that, then it really makes a strong case for how you should milk the content, repurpose it, put it on different platforms, see, you might not get that audience there on Instagram that day, but you might get somebody in that same audience on Facebook later that day, or on TikTok, or on LinkedIn, or YouTube. So I think it's, a misconception that social media managers have, or that brands have, is that their fans see every single thing that they do at all times, and it's just not the case.
Yeah, exactly.
So
New is better all the time.
yeah.
So, but you should be smart. What you're saying is you should be smart about repurposing content. It's not only about, it's mixing the channels also, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just doing reposting, but you actually just posting different channels and modify them in different formats. And
Yeah, and you should be taking a look at the channel and saying, like, okay, for example, if this thing is on Instagram to start with, but we know LinkedIn is much more business orientated, how do we twist the copy? How do we twist the approach to this towards that audience versus this audience? And then on TikTok's a little bit younger, so how do we spin it to be a little bit more fresh? Or how do we, so I think that's how you be smart, is that you look at it and in that context and say, okay, these are different types of audiences per platform. How do we make it work for each?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
All right, good. So, with all this content, repurposing content, how do you choose what content is worth repurposing then?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think first of all, you need to be a little bit strategic. How
Of course.
surprising coming from a strategist, but I think
Really, Andy? Shocking.
I think you need to be a little bit strategic, and whenever you get to producing new content pieces, you should already keep repurposing in mind, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Try to
From the get.
from the get-go. Try to create long-form content that you can run, test out, and see.
You stole my idea, Andy. I was going to talk all about this.
Think about just
I got
tuning him out
nothing
a little
better.
bit.
Okay,
Think
go
about
back.
something new.
Go back to your thoughts. Long form content. Sorry to screw you up. Now I got to come up with something better. Good luck, Chris.
But basically, just create long-form content. Try to, maybe even if it makes that you need to invest a little bit more into content production or content creation, on the long term, I'm sure it's gonna actually reduce your costs on the content production side if you go long-form content first and then repurpose content and create new content pieces from that long-form piece.
Right.
I think the blog example that you mentioned earlier is perfect. Or we could also say like a longer YouTube piece, let's say. How many of those YouTube videos have you seen that are sitting on major brands' YouTube channels with like 70 views, and they are like the highest end production?
Yeah.
2 minutes, 40 seconds long.
Right.
And,
They should have cut it into
Yeah.
smaller things.
Exactly.
And did like Instagram stories or YouTube stories or YouTube like posts or all that stuff that's available, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's just it's really, it comes down to, are you wasting money on content production, or are you like, as
Milking.
Chris says usually, are you milking everything possible out of, the content that you are actually creating?
Yeah. So it's not about choosing content. It's actually having it from the start in your mind about that we're going to repurpose this.
Yeah.
I think that's a very smart tactic, because I think a lot of brands, they don't think about how can we iterate on it and how can we chop it up later. So for example, if you're going to do a client testimonial video, client case, then you got to think of what questions are you going to ask to make those questions into individual videos so that you can say, okay, that'll be something. And then how do you say, okay, we're going to transcribe that and turn that into a nice PowerPoint deck that's going to be our case PowerPoint deck, or we're going to transcribe that into a blog piece, or we're going to invite our customer on for a podcast, and that's how we're going to get the interview video, and we're also going to have a podcast out of it, and then we're also going to be able to transcribe it, and all these sort of things, right? So from the start, you have to already be thinking, how are we going to squeeze every little thing out of this so that we can fill up our channels and use it? And it's not just about filling up the channels. It's also about making sure that you can have those different angles and find out what people are interested in. So if it is a client case and you see like this person talks about how it increased their performance in their company, right? But they also have a part in that place where they talk about how friendly you guys are. You can kind of use those pieces and find out, oh, people are really interested in the friendly thing. We've been talking about performance upgrades or performance improvements, and it hasn't worked as well as when we talk about how friendly our service is. That seems to resonate. So then you really get a sense of, all right, this is what's working on a marketing level. So you really got to think it from the start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you, again, touched upon something really interesting, because to add to that is it's really interesting to see when it gets to long form content, you can actually see, you know, where people, for example, if it's a video piece, where people are dropping off, or which aspects people are actually commenting on. So you can actually, as you mentioned as well, really double down on figuring out what is the messaging that is resonating with your audience. And then whenever it gets to repurposing, or whenever it gets to even just producing new content, you will already know. And that's the insight that you need for then to actually channel back to your previous question for creating quality content in the future.
Right.
Then
You're getting your insights, and then you're doubling back on it and saying, this is what's working, let's create more.
yeah, exactly.
I agree. And then if you are sort of in this position that you have a bunch of content that you haven't thought from the get-go, then how would you repurpose that? Like, how would you choose that today? If you hadn't thought it in from the beginning, what would you look for?
Basically, I think I would look through all the content we created. I would definitely look for long form content pieces and see if those could be, you know, if we could by any chance give them a new look maybe. Of course, you can't reshoot the video or anything, but you can always think about mixing up mediums, for example. Like you can think about like, okay, how could we use this sequence or that sequence, put it in new context, maybe shoot some mobile video to go with it, or maybe do some illustrations.
On the video level now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sorry, I'm so stuck on video level.
But I think video is a good place. And I think that's also where a lot of brands have invested the most money, right? So they're saying like, I've got this 2-minute, like you said, 2-minute brand video. The hell do I do with this thing to make it, you know, give it new life, so to speak, because we spent $100,000 on it.
Or just expand how much people see it. I mean, if you create all this kind of repurposed content surrounding this long piece, then you can actually channel people back to this hero content that's just sitting there with only 70 views, right?
True.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and actually, so I kind of distance myself from video content now a little bit. It's really interesting to see how people who have major blog sites do it. Like, I don't know if you realized it, but even like social media platform or like social media marketing tool providers like Hootsuite or any of those. Hootsuite or Sprout Social, for example. They are constantly refreshing the same articles with like, you know, trends for 2019, trends for 2020, trends for 2021.
Is it exactly the same trends?
There are not so huge differences in those articles, and they're just repurposing stuff constantly.
Yeah. Or here's our top articles from 2020. we'll see a lot of that. Like, here's
Yeah.
what got the most traction, and they'll just do a compilation of stuff, right?
Exactly. And I think it's also really interesting to think about, of course, we're a social media agency, but we have also seen like how you can repurpose content in ways that then can help you to actually create downloadables or other materials that can help you to, you know, acquire maybe new leads or new clients.
Right.
So, for example, if you have an article on, you know, digital marketing trends 2020, you can, of course, repurpose it into, let's say, a presentation. You can do a webinar on it.
Yeah.
Or you can repurpose it into a deck that can be a downloadable and people can download it. And of course, after each and every download, you get like someone who perhaps also signs up for your newsletter, but also a new valuable lead, of
Yeah.
course. So
Yeah, exactly. Or you could take a podcast episode about repurposing content, send it to somebody to transcribe, and then give it to your designer and say, take the best parts and make me a downloadable ebook about this.
maybe we will do that.
Yes, exactly. So this is
Yeah, I mean,
just an idea. I mean, I know we jumped the gun to like, how would you, because we were talking about
Yeah.
how would you choose? But I think like there's also looking at the data, finding out what did the best. That'll help you choose which content to repurpose. And then also looking at, is that possible? Like, it's kind of hard to repurpose an image. You can, I mean, you can do things. But video tends to be the most sort of repurposable, and text content, I would say,
Yeah.
is the most that you can cut up and repurpose it. So look at your low-hanging fruit will be videos and text, and then, you know, images can sort of fit in there.
what about
Yeah.
podcasts?
Podcasts are great, I think, if you're doing it right, because you can do snippets of things. So like we're doing it very section-based, like how, why, like all these kind of things that we're putting in here as you're listening. I hope this is also a masterclass in this. But we can basically take these different parts and make those into micro content that we can repurpose. And it's also why we're doing it as video. So we have the audio, we have the video,
Exactly.
and then unbeknownst to you, those of you listening, we also transcribe this and we'll put it as blog posts in the future. And so like that's coming as well. So there's a lot of things that we have cooking just from this one thing.
Yeah.
This format is perhaps really good.
Yeah, and I think that's also why, I mean, we're going to do a podcast marketing episode in the future, but I think it's also why brands should get into podcasting, is because it gives you some of those opportunities
Yeah.
if you're looking for those things.
Plus, also,
Definitely.
it's an excellent learning opportunity. Even if you're not going to get like thousands of likes out of it or anything like that, it's an excellent learning opportunity for your team. It's an excellent learning opportunity for your brand.
Yep.
You know, you will never know where you're gonna find the gold. So, exactly to your point, I think no matter what, you should always try to experiment. And if you haven't tried repurposing your content before, I would definitely recommend trying it
First
out.
step. Yep. Agreed.
Great. You touched up on it a little bit, but any final tips and tricks on how to repurpose content for brands, smaller companies, whatever?
Let's just do a sum up. Should we
Tips
just
and tricks. We just
Yeah.
like lightning round it.
Yeah, kind of.
We'd like
Who can say most
Artie.
in
Artie,
one
can you
minute?
make like a lightning round sort of effect when you're editing this? Edit. Artie saying yes. Artie, you guys don't see him. He's behind the camera. He's kicking ass back there. So he'll do a lightning effect. So lightning round, tips and tricks. I'll go, you go.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Oh, no, you go, I'll go. I don't want to go first.
Should
Okay.
I time
I
you
go?
guys?
Okay.
Okay.
Tip one.
Think about repurposing from the beginning,
We already had that. Okay, fine.
but it's a sum up.
It's a good
Ish,
sum up.
yeah.
Yeah. When you get a blog post, make a video script out of it, and then use that video script for a YouTube video.
Okay. Whenever you post long form content, look for sequences that perform really well, or look for sequences where you can see that people are commenting on specific aspects of that content piece, and repurpose that exact content piece, because that's going to have the best performance.
Great tip.
Do content roundups where you, I already said it as well. You got one that you already said, but basically where you say, okay, these were our best performing posts of the week, or this was the best performing post of the month or the year, and do a content roundup.
I like that. Okay. think not only content, but think about what other materials you can get out of these things. Maybe you can create some educational materials for your own people. Maybe you can create some downloadables that can be used in your other channels. Always think multi-angle and try to really milk it.
Yep. Another
milk?
tip.
Any other?
I got lots of stuff. Take your YouTube videos and the best sections where you're being animated or you're saying something, put it into Giphy. Giphy's got a GIF creator, and you can actually lay text on right at those moments. So if I'm saying like, make more content, then I can take that snippet out and then add the text, make more content, and then just put that on Giphy.
Interesting.
That's a really good one, I think.
on,
That's
lightning
gonna be
round.
really hard to tip it on, or tip it off. I don't know. Stop it on.
Top it.
it. Ooh, the pressure's on. Okay.
TikTok master, come.
TikTok master.
I got a good one. You ain't getting to see.
No.
It's not even repurposed content. It's just like, come on. I'll go. Okay. Okay. Show behind the scenes of actually how you're making that content.
Oh, but is that repurposing content?
No, but kind
Almost.
of. Judge. Do we have a ruling from the judge?
I think it's valid.
Oh, that's because I paid her.
Okay. One more thing on repurposing content is try to look back on what you have already. Maybe you don't have to think about creating new long form content pieces just yet, and maybe try to think about how you would fresh it, how you would make it fresh, fitting for the new ages. Even if it's a video from 2015 or 16. Maybe just spicing it up with some illustrations or animated infographics could really make it nice and stand out. Or maybe, if you have the raw footage, you could give it like a fresh look in terms of, color grade, because trends in colors and color science are constantly changing as well. So
good point.
Yeah.
I like that. I would say if you're running webinars and it's done well, just run it again. Exact same webinar. A lot of people just like, oh, we got to do a new webinar, but you probably have a ton of audience and a ton of people that haven't seen it. So go again, just same exact webinar.
Great idea.
Yeah. Is that it?
That's a long round, I hope. Anything you guys
Lightning
wanna add or?
I think now that you said webinar, I'm just thinking like how you can actually repurpose more stuff out of those webinars. But I think maybe we can keep those.
We can do specific formats next time. Then how do you repurpose webinars? How do you repurpose video? We can just segment those.
Actually, I think maybe we should shoot like a YouTube
we can
video.
milk everything out of this topic.
Yeah, we should actually probably shoot a YouTube video on how you actually do this on like an execution and strategy level.
Like all like showing. Oh, I almost dropped the glass. Everybody. I swear to God, I'm
Good
only
as
had
MC. Good as MC.
This is where we need like quick cuts of like everybody's face, like whoo.
one. Good GIF. What were we talking about?
Milking.
About milking this topic.
Of content repurposing.
Different formats.
We'll definitely make a video. We'll show behind the scenes of like showing one thing and then how many pieces come out of it. Yeah. But you can make
Set an example.
You could basically take this whole thing. So we've talked about here's our lightning round of content repurposing tips. That should be a repurposing tips top 10 list in Twitter. Literally just taking this content that we've just talked about and said tip 1, tip 2, tip like that's how you have to think. You've already made the content. You've already done the brain work. Mm-hmm. Go and execute and make other stuff out of it. Don't just say, oh, we made a podcast. That's enough.
Yeah.
No, milk the heck out of it. Everywhere you look, think about how do we squeeze it into everything.
Go follow Chris Carbonos on different platforms and you can see how much repurpose content.
Yes, everything's old crap.
Yeah.
Not crap, goldies.
But probably
Old gold.
I think probably we should have went through this whole case with the example of our podcast from the get-go, actually. Like how we use this podcast to showcase, how you actually repurpose content, because we shoot the podcast, we record it, as you mentioned as well. We are then in the future going to, transcribe it. But after shooting it and posting the full video on YouTube, we are also going to cut it up into smaller pieces and run those on social media.
Yes.
So
and also on YouTube.
Yeah.
Right. So this might be a long episode on YouTube, but then we also take how to repurpose content, how to choose content for repurposing, top tips for repurposing content. There's 3 videos out of one long video.
Yeah.
That's 30 minutes. Now we've made, 3 other, or 5 other, or 4 other 10-minute videos.
I think probably if we would try really hard, we could make like even 100 pieces of content out of this.
Great.
Oh yeah,
When you
That
have-
should be like
We
a
got
cool
blog
challenge.
post,
What you're doing
GIFs.
Saturday and Sunday.
But sometimes you just run out of time. Like you can't
Yeah.
do everything. That's also one thing that you'll find, those of you listening, when you do follow this methodology, you'll start to look at, holy crap, we can make so much out of this, and you kind of have to give up at one point because you've just literally got so much stuff. And I think that's a good place to be, because then you're not fighting for content or you're drowning in content, which is a better place to be.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's
So
it for today.
That's it for today.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening and
Thank
tuning
you guys.
in, guys.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you,
Yes.
guys.
What are we talking about next time?
I don't know, some special Halloween episode or podcast marketing. I
Yes,
don't know.
it's about scary social media stories.
But it's leading up to Black
Ooh.
Friday, so maybe we could talk about, timely marketing in social media.
No, forget that.
Shut down.
You weren't timely enough, Andy. We already had.
Sorry.
Well,
we already
actually,
had
you just
scary
have to
social.
tune in and listen and able to find out
Yeah,
what
it'll
we're going
be
to do
a
next.
Scary
secret,
social.
secret Halloween episode. We'll see you guys there. Thank you so much for listening. This has been the Social Media Sucks podcast by Cupco.
Thanks for checking in, guys.
Bye.
See ya.
This has been the Social Media Sucks Podcast.